great. So I've set up funds, added companies, added investments, and our reports are looking great. So if we want to go into our reports and look at a company report and drill down in one particular company, for example, mining tech, we've got our cash flows, so how much we've invested, which we covered. We've got our valuation, which we covered, and that's what's a key driver, which is calculating our multiple invested capital and an IRR by each investment. We can see how those metrics are calculated over time, right? It makes sense because our valuation has been going up over time. Maybe we had a recent dip, and IRR is time-based. So the longer you hold the investment, it will inevitably go down. So don't worry too much about that. But IRR is still an important metric. Anyway, I'm getting distracted because if we go through our company report, we'll scroll down, we'll see our qualitative information that we've uploaded when we set up each company. But then we get to our metrics. So the metrics is, at the end of the day, what is driving the value of each company? It's either, revenue or gross margin or EBITDA. At the end of the day, when you sell your company, the portfolio company, whether it's trade sale, IPO, or to a financial sponsor, they will inevitably value the company based on the growth rate of revenue, what is the value of EBITDA, and also taking into account things like, gross margin, etc. And beyond that, what is driving those things is, for example, headcount or pricing, or these are the operational drivers which ultimately lead to that outcome, which maximizes your returns. So that's why it's also important to collect this data at a portfolio company level and really understand the levers of what's driving that growth. So if you see an issue early, you go in and fix it. It's going to maximize your return. If you see growth rates are a little bit slower than they should be, you go and encourage them. So you use this data to drive returns, which drives your fund level IRR and returns to investors. In this video, we're going to show you how to set up these metrics, categorize them, request the data from portfolio companies, or fill them in yourselves. So this is just an output. This is a report which is pulling it from our metrics module. So the metrics module is really where you go to set up each of your metrics across all of your portfolio companies. And as you can see, we can select our company within the fund hierarchy. We can download our metrics. We can see our metrics in table format. We can change this to quarterly or yearly. I'll go back to monthly now. We've also got multi-currency enabled as well. So when you set up a company, and if it's in a different currency, for example, euros to your fund reporting currency, which, when you add a company and you add a fund, currency is one of those fields that you fill in, then by default, we'll know that you need to have the option to change the exchange rate. So we do all that automatically. We'll go through that shortly in this video. So you can see all the metrics data. You can change the metrics and edit the metrics as to what shows up for each portfolio company. You can edit the data in spreadsheet mode. You can request the data from portfolio companies. And once the data is in the system, you can actually scroll down. You can see, and this is a reporting module in of itself. So you can see, for example, how your revenue is trended over time. So you can identify trends over the long term, EBITDA, gross margin, whatever your metrics up there are, you can see them in greater detail in chart format down below. Okay, so let's go through the first step is how do you actually add metrics into Fundsheet. So the first step is to go add metrics over here. So I'm assuming when you first get started, you're not going to have any metrics set up, or you might have one or two by default. So if you wanted to add some additional metrics, we'd go into metrics and go add metrics over here. We've got a couple of options. The two main ones is to add metrics from a database. So what that means is you can basically choose from all these pre-filled ones that we've added to the system. So I've saved you the trouble of the name, the type, the unit, the description, the formula calculation. So you can just click on these and it'll set up straight away, right? So if you wanted to add revenue, if you wanted to add EBITDA, if you wanted to add ARR, we can add all of those very quickly. And you can even add it across multiple portfolio companies. So you don't need to just add it one company at a time. If I were to tick all of these companies and click add, it's going to get added to every single one of those portfolio companies. I'm not going to do that because we've already got our metrics set up over here already. The other option is if you've got more of a tailored metric that you prefer to add, what you can do is you can go add custom metric. So what you can do is add custom metric, and from here you can choose the name. You can add a group. So if you want to group them together like financial, or group them into certain groups, you can choose whether it's a number, percentage, or currency. You can choose whether it's a sum of periods. So for example, what that means is when you condense the monthly data into quarterly or yearly data, do you add them up? So for example, revenue, we collect that monthly revenue for the year. You'd probably want to sum up every single month to get the yearly revenue. Whereas something like headcount, which is number of people, you probably want to go the last month within that period. So for example, if you've got 12 headcount one month, 13 headcount the next month, you don't want to sum it up to 25. You just want to know what is the headcount at the end of the quarter. So you go end of period for that one. You can even write an explanation or formula if you want. You don't have to. Just provide a little bit of extra information to the user, which is often the portfolio company, on how is it specifically calculated and what does it actually mean, right? Because the devil's in the detail. So you can add this to multiple portfolio companies in the same way. So you can just tick the multiple companies as you add it. And the other cool thing is that you can do is, alternatively, what you can do is you can go add a formula metric. So what that means is, if you wanted to sum three of your custom metrics like revenue 1, revenue 2, revenue 3, and do a sum of all those, you can actually select the pre-existing metrics you can add them and create your own formula, like revenue plus EBITDA, to create your own new formula that's just automatically calculated and isn't an input, it's just an automatically calculated output. Or it could be like gross margin, which might be like gross margin divided by, revenue, for example. So you can do whatever you want and automatically calculate it based off other metrics. Okay, cool. So once you've got all your metrics set up and you're happy with them, you can also export it to Excel and upload it by Excel if you prefer. So now we've got two options to actually edit the monthly data in here, get some numbers in there so we can start seeing the trend. So the first option is you can actually just edit it yourself. So just go over here, click edit data, choose the date range, so you can just select it from a dropdown and go edit in spreadsheet mode. So this is just like a spreadsheet, so you can either just type over the top like so, right? Or you can export it to Excel. You'll notice it's downloaded the file. We'll fill in the file in Excel, maybe copy it from another one, and then click upload, and then we can either click or drag and drop and upload, and it'll instantly replace all of the numbers here. You can also lock the data. So when you're sending out requests, maybe you don't want anyone in your team or portfolio companies logging in to edit the data before a certain date, so that's consistent. You can just lock the number, lock the date, and no one can edit before, for example, June 2023. You can lock that. So the other way, which you probably prefer to get the data in the system, is to actually request the data from portfolio companies. So we can do that. That's no problem. What we do is we'll go request data. So I'm going to click over there. And you can see for the selected company, you can see all of the request forms that we've previously sent, their date, the expiry date, which months we requested, who received it, and its status. So what you can do, if we want to send a new form, we'll send a new form. We're going to choose a date range. So for example, from Jan to March, right? You can select the companies that you want to send it out to, and you can actually send out recurring reminders if you prefer to automate this process like every month or every quarter. But right now we're just doing custom date range here. So January 24 to March 2024. I'm going to send it for these two portfolio companies. We're going to choose the date range, so 5 days, for example. Click send. It's going to give you a confirmation as to who's actually receiving the email and what period you're requesting it, and also the due date. So how do you actually set up users to receive this? Well, you'd actually go to the users menu over here and click add recipients as one of the options, where you can actually add a user and link it to a portfolio company. They don't necessarily need a login to the system. As long as their email is set up as a recipient, they're just going to receive basically email reminders as part of this. They'll better click the link, log in, and fill in the data. If you prefer portfolio companies to have a user login for security purposes, like a username and password, that's fine. You just add them as a user, and they'll be able to log in and access all the Fundsheet, and you can control their access rights. So maybe only give them access to the metrics module, for example. But for most of our customers, they prefer just to do this method, which is add them as a recipient, send out a form, and they don't need a username and login to log in. They just click a link, and it'll take them to their form. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll send that out now, and I'll show you what that actually looks like from the other side. I'm going to check my email and open up the link. Great. So I've received the email now. Pretend I'm a portfolio company. I can see the name of the fund, the name of the portfolio company, the due date. It's also got the name of the portfolio company user. It's got the name of the fund. It's got the name of the portfolio company here. It's got the person who sent it out's email for any questions. So it looks like a very tailored email. It looks like something that's been drafted by a human and is heavily tailored to suit the recipient. So it looks very natural. But what they'll see is there's a big button that they can click Get Started, and it'll take them to a form. So they don't even need a login or anything like that. They just click the link. Anyone with a link can access this. They can fill it in. But once it's submitted, it's locked. So for example, this user could then type in the revenue numbers, and you'll notice that these are all the custom metrics that we've set up for this particular portfolio company. This user will then type it in and submit the data, or they can upload an Excel file. And that will then change to field. And then if we go back to our metrics module, we'll be able to see the updated data in here that's been submitted, and also use this reporting tool down below. So the next step is we've talked about setting up metrics, collecting data. What about multi-currency feature? So I'll quickly go through that if this is relevant to you. So the first step is, depending on what currency your fund is, so I'm just going to go back to our funds. You can see this, the fund currency is in US dollars, okay? Now let's go to one of our companies and see when we first add a company, one of the fields is the currency of that particular portfolio company. And as you can see, this one's in euros, right? So there we'd have a kind of an exchange rate issue because this particular portfolio company, SaaS business, is probably reporting its currency in euros, but the fund is in US dollars. So how do we get around that issue? So first of all, you can see it defaults to euros because that's the reporting currency of the portfolio company. But we'll also notice that because the fund currency is in US dollars, we'll have the option to automatically convert all of the financial metrics in the system. And how we do that is if we go to settings up here, you'll notice that one of the options is currencies. So we've actually got this API which pulls on a monthly basis all of the exchange rates they use. It'll pull the exchange rate for each of those currencies. So that's how you can automatically convert back to US dollars, euros, etc. The only thing to just be very careful of is it will only convert metrics which are in dollars, right? So, sorry, a currency. And what I mean by that is, if we go back to our add metrics, when you set up a custom metric, one of the options are currency, see? So just make sure that you've actually set up your metric that you want to convert as a currency. Otherwise, it's not going to convert, because we don't want to convert things like headcount into a different currency, for example, which would be a number, right? So just be careful about that. What else? I think we've pretty much covered everything for this module. You can also export this to Excel if you prefer. Otherwise, yeah, that's